Well, I won't take you to the shrink. We'll try to take the consumers to a shrink. So let's see if I've got control of the presentation. I do. Right. So just to go back a little bit. So hi everyone. My name is Elina Halonen, and like Lenny said, I'm from the Rational Agency in London. What I wanted to share with you today is a new way of profiling consumer motivation, so that we could become better at influencing their purchase behaviour. So if we could start by reflecting a little bit on our experiences as researchers. Quite a common problem in research agencies is that findings from projects conducted for the same clients by different agencies, they don't always quite match. The fact is that we often find it difficult to replicate or even reflect findings from one project to another, and that can sometimes cause clients to doubt the credibility and also perhaps question the true value of market research sometimes. Now, in a similar way, why is it that sometimes, even though we feel extremely confident about the recommendations that we make to our clients, when the findings are implemented in real life, they sometimes fall a little bit short of what was supposed to be achieved? So, for example, there's the advertising campaign that fails to persuade the target audience. There's the price promotion that doesn't quite achieve the sales it's expected to, and so on. So I think that's probably sounds quite familiar to many of us. And I wondered, could it be that there's something else at play, something that we don't know about? So our job as researchers is to understand consumers so that we can help our clients to influence their behaviour. That's basically our job. So whether it's eating more chocolate, booking a holiday, or buying a new car, those are all things that we want to help our clients influence consumers' behaviour in. We also try to predict how consumers might react to marketers' attempts to persuade them. So will they love the new TV ad? Will they buy the washing powder that's buy one get one free, and so on. To achieve this, we try our hardest to build a picture of the consumer and get inside their heads by using, for example, demographic, socioeconomic, and psychographic measures, among other things. However, we're still often left guessing how we could best influence consumers' behaviour, and we're perhaps left a little bit unsure of how they'll react to these attempts to persuade them. So my question is, if we're still sometimes failing to fully understand the consumers, is it possible that we're actually missing something important? Oh no, we've gone one too far. So as an industry, and things that we think affect the consumer's decision-making process. So, for example, attitudes, values, and tastes. Now, we all know that we all know that we can't really target an average consumer. So instead, we usually profile them based on these things, and then use that for our recommendations. Now, while all these things play an important role in consumers' purchase decisions, and not to mention that we're also very good at measuring them, we still kind of implicitly assume that the way in which consumers make decisions is fundamentally the same. But is that really true? For example, in a segmentation, these things, so attitudes, values, and tastes, or as we usually call them, likes, they might, and a couple of other things, of course, they might explain what, where, and how people are buying things, even a little bit about why they buy. But it's still missing the key link of how we can influence these things and consumers' behaviour in the best possible way. Because attitudes and tastes, basically, they just give us the content, but not really the triggers to change behaviours. Now, there's over 20 years or there's quite a lot more, of consumer psychology research, which suggests that there are significant differences between individuals when it comes to making purchase decisions. So, in other words, just like consumers are different in their attitudes and tastes, they're also different in their cognitive processes and how they make decisions. So what this considerable body of research suggests is that in order to persuade consumers, we need to understand their deeper goals and motivations. Now, these deeper goals and motivations are basically characteristics of the way in which people make decisions, regardless of category or product, and they're consistent with the way in which they act in all their decisions, so not just when they're buying things. Now, here I think I need to distinguish between temporary and permanent goals. So, for example, temporary goals are things like I want to go on holiday, I want to buy a coffee, so much more in the moment and serving kind of an instrumental need. Whereas permanent goals are more in the sense, well, in the sense that I'm talking about them today, are more in the context of how someone's mind works, which is more sort of all-encompassing and a slightly high level. Now, discovering these deeper needs will help us understand and therefore influence how much information, for example, how much information consumers look for before they make a purchase or decide to buy something, how they interpret the information they find, and what types of marketing tactics are likely to be most efficient and effective for them. So in short, it'll help us uncover the most effective triggers for influencing consumers' behaviour. Now, there are 4 of these high-level goals or needs, and I'll talk about them in detail a little bit later. But just to give you a flavour, if you imagine, for example, a holiday brochure, because of their decision-making style, some consumers will focus more on the facts or the description of the destination or hotel, whereas some will be persuaded more by the visuals. So that's just to kind of just to give you a flavour of what types of things we're talking about, and I'll go into a little bit more detail in the next couple of slides. So the reason we need to understand this is that when consumers are making a purchase decision, they make their decision based on what best meets their goals, their personal goals for that particular situation. So in terms of both the temporary and permanent goals, although today we're just focusing on the permanent goals. These permanent goals are basically individual motivational traits that guide people when they're deciding on what to do. They're individual psychological factors that influence how much consumers think about the purchase, how they think about it, how confident they need to feel with their decision before they make it, and how they use the information that's available to them. Now, in other words, that means how much and in what ways they think about the products, the marketing messages we send them or our clients send them, how they use the cues and arguments that are embedded in those marketing messages, whether it's in the packaging, in advertising, whatever it is, and also fundamentally how marketers can influence their decisions. Now, on these motivational traits, that you should imagine it as a continuum or a scale, and we all fall somewhere along that scale essentially. So whether we're high or low in a particular trait will affect different things, and again, I'll talk about these in the next couple of slides. So basically, there are 4 motivational traits that drive all of our decisions, and I'll just go through them quickly and then I'll explain each one in detail. So they are need for cognition. These are the 4 most important traits that marketers need to understand. So these are need for cognition, so that's how much someone enjoys thinking or spending effort in thinking. The need for cognitive closure, which is effectively how quickly someone wants to make a decision. The need for affect, so how much emotion someone wants to experience. And need for uniqueness, so how unique you need to feel. If we start from need for cognition, it's like going back slightly. These 4 traits can be called sort of metamotives, that in the sense that they're not directly related to any particular purchase decision, but they guide our decision making more broadly. So like I said before, they're sort of high level needs that we need to satisfy in all our decisions. And if we think back to what other things we're currently measuring, so attitudes, values, and tastes, these 4 traits effectively sort of mediate and affect. Well, they mediate the effect these other things that we measure that they have on purchase decisions. So if we start by thinking need for cognition, it's effectively how much someone enjoys thinking. So, for example, those consumers who are high on need for cognition, they're more likely to really carefully consider their purchases. They'll be less swayed by heuristic cues. For example, celebrity endorsement advertising, which is a really easy quick thing to kind of go, right, someone famous, someone well known is endorsing this, it must be good. That's an example of heuristic cue. And they're more likely to base attitudes based on a thorough evaluation of product attributes, for example. Now, on the other hand, those consumers who are lower on need for cognition, they're more sensitive to kind of for example, the mere presence of a promotion. So this affects pricing tactics. without carefully considering what the actual discount might be. It's just the fact that there's a promotion. That's kind of a quick and easy cue for them that they don't have to think about things any further. And so if you just have to influence these consumers, if you just have a promotion, that will positively affect their value perceptions and shopping intentions. Another thing that this trait will affect, or understanding this trait will help us do better, is to decide what type of advertising works better for which type of consumers. So, for example, those consumers that are at the lower end of the Needful cognition scale, humorous advertising generates much more favourable responses. Now, moving on to Needful cognitive closure, that's basically how quickly someone wants to make a decision. So it's to kind of explain it a little bit more, it's an individual's desire for clear or definite knowledge to guide their perception and their behaviour. So what these people find really undesirable is ambiguity and confusion. So they're basically intolerant of a situation where they can't make a decision quickly, and they use concrete attributes that are more easily accessible in memory. So they will limit their information search if possible, and they'll rely more on heuristics such as what I described earlier, and tangible benefits. So another example of tangible benefits or a heuristic is stereotypical judgments based on country of origin. So it's British, therefore it must be good, or it's French, so this wine must be better than the other wines, for example, just to simplify it. They might also use brands as a way of giving them confidence in their decision, so they'll be more likely to prefer well-known brands, and price is another strong cue for those consumers who really want to make a decision quickly. They'll think of that as a quality cue and replace the thinking process of considering whether something's good quality is that it's high price, so therefore it must be good quality. So in terms of a tip for marketers, for these types of consumers, you should provide a cue that closes the purchase decision very quickly. Also, for example, for these consumers, you could use marketing tactics such as scarcity, so something that's a limited edition that will work very well for consumers that are high on need for cognitive closure. And for example, in the context of retail grocery shopping, the consumers that are high need for cognitive closure, they'll be more likely to make an effort to search for price and promotional information. And the third one is need for affect. So that's how much emotion someone wants to feel. So if you just imagine Bridget Jones, she's quite emotional, and basically she seeks out a lot of emotion in her life. That's kind of what satisfies her. So these consumers, how this affects their purchase behaviour is that they'll be more affected by emotional advertising because they are drawn to and want to experience strong emotional states. These consumers also want to, they prefer visual information over verbal information, whereas the ones I talked about first, those in higher on, they want to think about things a bit more, high need for cognition, they'll prefer verbal information over visual ones. They're also consumers that have a high need for affect or emotion. They're more likely to have extreme attitudes, they're more prone to impulse shopping, they'll prefer brand names with strong emotional cues. So these are types of things that what this trait affects in terms of purchase behaviour. And finally, last one that we need to consider is the need for uniqueness. So basically, how unique a consumer needs to feel. These consumers, those consumers that are high in need for uniqueness, they have a tendency to pursue that through consumption. So they have a desire for scarce or innovative and customised products. So they're more likely to make unconventional choices. And for example, if you want to seek out opinion leaders or market mavens, or want to do some innovation work or new product development, these are potentially the types of people that you want to speak to in that instance. Now, so what do we do with all of this? So there are established and scientifically validated scales that are available in the academic literature. So these scales can be included, for example, in segmentations, UNAs, ad testing, to add a deeper layer of profiling. And this will effectively help with predicting consumers' reactions to marketing tactics more accurately than what we can at the moment. and we can also have more confidence in our recommendations to clients. So, for example, we can profile a sample of retailers' customer base, which would give us a good picture of what types of promotions are likely to be most efficient and why. And then we can tailor future promotions and messages to be consistent with the decision-making style of their typical customer. Now, we can also tailor recruitment screeners to avoid psychologically biased samples or ensure specific target audiences. And this in particular might help with achieving consistency from one project to another, because at the moment we might have samples that have been demographically and sometimes even psychographically matched. But what if two projects have entirely different types of people as respondents when it comes to their deeper psychological needs and decision-making styles? That could help explain why we find it difficult to match the findings from different projects. So just to kind of wrap up, our current ways of profiling consumers are not enough to accurately measure and predict their reactions to marketing actions. What we need to do, they're also not efficient in uncovering consumers' deeper needs and goals, and that's crucial for us as researchers, and especially for our clients, to understand if we want to figure out the most effective triggers to influence consumers' behaviour. So this type of motivational profiling essentially adds a deeper layer of understanding of consumers' needs, in addition to what we currently do in terms of demographic and psychographic measures. And it will help us predict more accurately how different groups of consumers will react to marketing activities such as advertising and pricing, and most importantly, provide genuinely actionable recommendations for our clients. And that's really all I wanted to share with you today. And now I'd love to have some questions from you. So back over to Lenny.